Your first breath is taken not in a sterile, welcoming maternity ward surrounded by weeping grandparents and pastel balloons, but in the makeshift, hyper-sanitized surgical theatre of a heavily fortified ranch deep in the Sierra Madre. There is no soft lullaby playing in the background. The soundtrack to your arrival into the world is the low, rhythmic hum of diesel generators and the crunch of gravel under the boots of men patrolling the perimeter. Your birth is treated less like a miracle of life and more like a high-risk tactical operation. There are no cigars passed around in waiting rooms. Instead, there is a tense, suffocating silence. A private doctor, blindfolded for the 3-hour helicopter ride to the compound, delivers you with trembling hands. Before he is escorted off the premises, he is handed a heavy nylon gym bag stuffed with unbanded, untraceable cash. He doesn't count it, he just nods. Om keeps his eyes fixed firmly on the floor and disappears into the night. From day one, a profound and terrifying reality is set into motion. You are not just a son, you are not just an heir. You are a vulnerability, you are a living, breathing target for rival syndicates, for ambitious lieutenants, and for the DEEA. Your very existence shifts the tectonic plates of the underworld. You are the one piece of leverage that could make a ruthless man compromise. And so, your baptism isn't a quiet Sunday affair at a local parish. It is a highly orchestrated gathering of the most dangerous men on the continent, a ceremony where the blessings spoken over your tiny head are less about divine protection and more about absolute blood-sworn loyalty. You are introduced to a life that chose you long before you ever had a say in the matter. Your childhood is an exercise in bizarre, dizzying contradictions. You grow up inside a gilded cage, a sprawling estate that defies logic. You have a private zoo housing exotic big cats that pace restlessly against reinforced glass. You have a fleet of custom-sized all-terrain vehicles and a private cinema where you can watch whatever you want, whenever you want. To an outsider, it looks like a limitless playground. But children are incredibly perceptive. Even at a young age, you begin to notice the invisible walls. You notice that your father, a man who gently teaches you how to ride a horse, a man whose embrace smells comfortingly of expensive cedar cologne, sweet tobacco and worn leather, never seems to fully relax. You notice that he sleeps with a customized gold-plated pistol resting casually on his nightstand, right next to a framed picture of you. You realize with a strange childhood intuition that he rarely stays in the same house for more than 3 consecutive nights, or he is a ghost who occasionally materializes to kiss your forehead before vanishing into the convoy of black SUVs waiting idly in the courtyard. Then, there is your name. You have an affectionate childhood nickname, something sweet your mother calls you when she brushes your hair. But you soon figure out that this nickname is actually a radio call sign. It is barked into walkie-talkies by the heavily armed men who shadow your every single move. You don't have playdates. You don't wander over to a neighbor's house to scrape your knees and trade baseball cards. Instead, you have carefully vetted, highly monitored interactions with the children of your father's lieutenants. These kids are your age, but their eyes are older. They intuitively know, even at 7 or 8 years old, that they are absolutely not allowed to beat you at video games. They let you win, every single time, with a forced enthusiasm that leaves you feeling hollow. You are surrounded by people, yet you are experiencing a profound, suffocating isolation. The dynamic inside the house is a masterclass in unspoken anxiety. Your mother is beautiful, draped in the finest European silks, but her eyes constantly dart to the windows. She lives in a state of perpetual, quiet terror, medicated by a glass of wine that is never quite empty. Around the age of 8, you finally ask the question that has been burning in your chest. You ask her what exactly it is that your father does. She doesn't blink. She offers you a polished, practiced euphemism. She tells you he is in logistics. She tells you he manages agricultural exports and large-scale transportation. She frames him as a busy executive, a captain of industry, and for a little while, you want to believe her, but the cognitive dissonance is too loud. Executives in agriculture don't have armed guards stationed outside their son's bedroom door. The turning point hits you around age 12. It doesn't happen in a dramatic cinematic shootout. It happens in the quiet, crushing realization of who you really are. It happens on a smuggled iPad, an unblocked news broadcast, or a careless internet search that slips past your security details firewall. You type in your family name, and the illusion shatters instantly. You don't see articles about agricultural exports. You see the headlines. You see the seized shipments. You see the burned out vehicles. You see the bodies. The euphemisms your mother carefully constructed evaporate in an instant, replaced by the cold, graphic reality of cartel violence. The blood on the boots is no longer metaphorical. You realise that the private zoo, the cinema, the expensive cologne, all of it is paid for with a currency of human suffering so vast you cannot even comprehend it. Your formal initiation into this reality comes shortly after. But it doesn't come from your father. It doesn't happen in a smoky room full of men with guns. It happens in a cold, windowless, heavily air-conditioned office with the cartel's chief financial architect, the consigliere. This man doesn't look like a gangster. He looks like a Wall Street banker. He wears a bespoke suit, speaks in a calm, measured tone, and sips sparkling water. He sits you down and begins to break down the actual mechanics of your father's empire. He doesn't talk about violence, territory, or rivalries. He talks about shell companies. He talks about offshore accounts in jurisdictions that refuse to cooperate with federal subpoenas. He explains the agonizingly complex process of smurfing, of breaking down millions of dollars in illicit cash into tiny, unnoticeable deposits. He looks you dead in the eye and explains the absolute, non-negotiable necessity of legitimate doors. He tells you that blood money, no matter how much of it you have, is ultimately useless if it cannot be spent in the sunlight. It must eventually become clean money. It must buy real estate, fund construction companies, and purchase legitimate businesses. And then he leans in and delivers the hook. That is where you will fit in. Adolescence, for you, is solitary confinement disguised as unimaginable privilege. By the time you are 15, you are handed the keys to a custom-built bulletproof Mercedes SUV. It is an engineering marvel. The doors weigh hundreds of pounds, the glass can stop armour-piercing rounds, and the cabin is hermetically sealed against chemical attacks. But as you sit behind the wheel, you realise it is just a mobile vault. The real cost of this vehicle is your individuality. Every single attempt you make at a normal teenage life is systematically, ruthlessly dismantled by the security apparatus that surrounds you. You cannot go to the mall, you cannot sneak out to a party. So, after you try to escape into the digital world, you immerse yourself in online gaming, using anonymous avatars with fake names. For a few hours a day, through a headset, you get to experience what it feels like to be a nobody. You get to be judged solely on your reflexes and your skills, rather than the terrifying weight of your last name. It is the only place in the world where you are truly free. But the real world always violently pulls you back. Romantic relationships are mathematically impossible. The first time you show genuine interest in a girl at your private school, you make the mistake of mentioning her name at the dinner table. A week later, she stops coming to school. You discover, with a sickening drop in your stomach, that your father's intelligence men ran a full, invasive background check on her family. They found a minor indiscretion, a small unpaid debt, and used it to quietly terrify her parents into moving 3 states away. You are a radioactive asset. Anyone who gets too close to you, anyone who tries to love you or befriend you, risks getting severely burned. So, you learn to shut down. You learn to project a polite, impenetrable exterior.
By the time you reach 18, the operation shifts. You are sent away to a highly prestigious university in Europe. You are enrolled under a carefully constructed alias, complete with a backstopped passport and a fabricated family history. This is supposed to be your freedom. This is supposed to be your chance to breathe. But the paranoia is already hardwired into the deepest grooves of your brain. You sit in centuries-old lecture halls alongside the children of the global elite. You listen to them complain about trivial things, a bad grade, a delayed flight, a minor argument with their parents. You watch them stress over problems that seem so small, they are practically microscopic. And you know, with absolute certainty, that you can never form a genuine friendship with any of them. You cannot go out and get drunk, because alcohol loosens the tongue, and a slipped detail could trigger an international manhunt. You cannot be vulnerable. You cannot bring a date back to your penthouse because the perimeter is monitored by silent, unsmiling men who check every guest for recording devices. You walk through the vibrant, historic streets of Europe as a ghost among the living. You are experiencing the best the world has to offer, but you are experiencing it from behind an inch of bulletproof glass. The climax of your story arrives in your early 20s. You are abruptly summoned back home for a final defining conversation. When you walk into the compound, the atmosphere has changed. Your father is older now. The legendary, invincible aura that surrounded him when you were a child has completely evaporated. In its place is the exhausting, twitchy paranoia of a man who has survived one too many assassination attempts. His eyes are hollow. He looks at every shadow as if it is holding a knife. He sits you down in a quiet room, pours a glass of expensive amber liquid, and finally reveals the ultimate truth of your existence. You will never inherit the guns. You will never manage the supply routes or negotiate with the cartels across the border or order violence. Your destiny was written in stone the very night that Doctor was handed a bag of cash. Your job is to be the clean, corporate face of the family. He slides a thick leather binder across the desk. Inside are the deeds to massive real estate development firms, the charters for philanthropic foundations, and the controlling shares of legitimate logistics companies. Your job is to run these entities. Your job is to take the staggering, suffocating amount of dirty cash, the hundreds of millions of dollars rotting in hidden walls and buried safes, and wash it through the global financial system until it sparkles. You will wear a tailored suit. You will sit on the boards of charities, and you will shake hands with politicians who pretend not to know where your seed money came from. You will build hospitals and fund scholarships, and the public will applaud your generosity. But as you sit there, staring at the documents, the heaviest realization of your life drops squarely onto your shoulders. Any good you ever do in this world, any hospital you build or charity you fund, will never be about altruism. It will simply be a highly calculated public relations strategy designed to legitimize the family name and keep your aging father out of a federal supermax prison. You are not a CEO. You are a human shield wrapped in a corporate charter. You look at your father. You see the exhaustion in his eyes, the absolute desperation of a man who built an empire of blood and now desperately needs his son to clean it up. You don't argue. You don't scream. And the fight was bred out of you years ago by the gilded cage, the isolation, and the sheer, crushing weight of the machinery around you. You accept the role. You take the binder. A few months later, you find yourself sitting in the quiet luxury of a glass-walled corporate boardroom overlooking a major metropolis. You are wearing a suit that cost more than most people make in a year. You are respected. You are feared by men in boardrooms rather than men in back alleys. But as you look out over the city skyline, checking the reflection in the glass, just like you were taught to check your rearview mirrors, you finally understand the punchline to the joke of your life. You have all the money in the world. You have power, influence, and a perfectly clean alias. But you are, and always will be, a hostage to your own bloodline.